I never expected my life to be like this. I never imagined that my wife, Janice, would need more than I do. And I never imagined that I would put up with it. Whenever I heard or read about any cuckold, my reaction was always burn the bitch. Couldn't imagine how anyone could tolerate disrespect or humiliation. For even 1 minute, I always thought it would have cost me a lot of labor, not to smash that bitch's face into mush. At the mere thought of my wife cheating on me, I clenched my fists and trembled. Nothing seems to be working out the way you envision. I thought my wife and I would settle down in those years, between our youngest son's departure for college and my eventual retirement, enjoying each other's company, taking the vacations we'd always dreamed of, and exploring each other's sexuality in ways we couldn't, while working and raising our children. But on Friday night, shortly after my son left, the cliches began. Honey, we need to talk. I've been a loving and faithful wife for 35 years, and I've never known anyone but you, so I decided to have a lover. And of course, that won't take anything away from you. I'll still be your loving wife, and be there for you whenever you want to make love. But you're unlikely to want to do it more than once a week. And frankly, my libido needs more than you're providing. Surprisingly, my first reaction wasn't to want to punch her in the face. I gasped and wondered if I was going to have a heart attack. Janice must have thought the same thing, because she rushed to get me water and aspirin. As I regained my breath, tears ran down my cheeks. You can't do this, we love each other. Janice smiled sadly at me, but I could see she was in complete control. We still love each other, but honey, I already did. I gasped again and my brain started spinning, trying to figure out what she was saying. I needed to figure out if a lover was worth the risk before I told you. It's been 3 months, and while I still love you as much as I did before, I love him too. The reason we are talking today is that Wally wants me to spend some nights at his house. And some nights he will be spending some nights here with me. You'll have to move into the guest room. On the nights we're together, you can sleep in my bed with me. But after that, you'll stay in the guest room. That brought me back to reality, and I finally felt the rage rising in me. What the hell, I paid for this house. I'm not moving into any guest room. I'm not a fucking guest. It's your choice, honey. I'm going to spend the weekend with Wally at his house. And if you're not in the guest room, when I get back, I'll just move in with Wally and we can divorce. I'd hate to see you throw away 35 years of companionship. But in this case, the ball is on your side. With those words, she went to get her overnight bag, kissed the top of my head, and walked off into the night. I started sobbing. I couldn't help it. And I hated myself for it. I couldn't believe what she had done. She obviously didn't care what I thought or felt. And I let her do it. I was a goddamn wuss. And Wally. What the fuck kind of name was Wally? Was she leaving me for Wally? I imagined that wuss. A wuss. It was obvious from Janice's demeanor that as big a wuss as Wally was, she thought I was an even bigger one. I wept myself to sleep. My pillow was wet with tears. And I couldn't understand how my life had been ruined overnight. I couldn't believe that I was to live without Janice. She was my life, that bitch. How could she? Over the weekend, I went through waves of despair and anger. I gathered up all the wedding albums and photos and threw them into the fireplace, but then took them out before I could set them on fire. I loved that bitch. I couldn't live without her. The thought lingered in my head. Also, the thought of a no-fault state divorce from a wife who never had a job outside the home made me realize that I wouldn't have much of a life without her. While she could get alimony while living with Wally, I cried some more, but finally decided that if she was only spending a couple nights a week with Wally, I could probably live with that. Then I got angry with myself and pounded my fist into the wall. As I iced my hand and repaired the wall, I realized that I had only hurt myself. And divorcing Janice would only hurt me. I was approaching 60, my hair was thinning, and my belly was approaching the bowl full of Jell-O description. And a divorce wouldn't leave enough money for a balding fat man to get sex often, if ever. At least with Janice, it seemed that I would still be getting the same sex I had before. Her lover showed up. 3 months, she said. I thought about it and found that my sex life hadn't changed, even though she was only gone for 1 day. In between nightmares in which she pictured herself with her lover, I missed her. I didn't know what to do when she wasn't around. I know it sounds pathetic, but she was my life. Fear makes cowards of us all. I was afraid of losing her altogether. Sunday afternoon, I moved into the guest room. I sobbed and felt sorry for myself while I did it. It was actually Monday morning when she came back, and I was getting ready for work. She showered me with kisses that seemed somewhat brackish. Was she really doing Wally a sex favor that morning? My stomach churned. After kissing me, she sauntered upstairs and made sure I moved into the guest room. Wonderful, honey. You'll see it's best for everyone. I walked out the door pondering how wonderful this was for me. I had been pondering it all day. I pondered it even more when I got home, and suggested we go upstairs so I could get my wife back. And Janice smiled sadly and shook her head. Honey, Wally says we can only make love when he approves. He doesn't want us to have sloppy seconds, or any traces of you when we make love. And he and I have a date tomorrow, so I'm out of range right now. I'll ask him when it's your turn and let you know, okay? She smiled at me as if doing me a favor. What the fuck, I shouted. You're my wife, not his. How can he decide when we have sex? At that moment, I refused to call it making love. I just didn't feel love, honey. Wally is the alpha and you're not. She sighed, I love you. But you're not the alpha. Wally knows how to set things up and you just need to be patient. Everything's going to be great. You'll see I've made your favorite dishes for dinner. And after dinner, I'll tell you all about our weekend with Wally. And I couldn't believe it. I don't want to hear about your fucking weekend. I interrupted her. You can keep those fucking details to yourself. Never in my life had I used the word slut so often. But somehow it seemed appropriate in this conversation. I'm sorry, honey, but Wally says I have to tell you. He says it will only work out if you know the details. You have to realize how manly he is and how he meets all my needs. That you can't, you'll see. Fuck you, I shouted and sprinted out of the house. I had a whiskey at a local bar and eventually stopped for a hamburger before heading home. When I got home, Janice wasn't there. It was already Thursday when she showed up. Wally says if you're going to sulk, I have to stay with him, and he says, no sex for you for 2 weeks. And then only if you listen to the details of our relationship. Wally's in mind sex. I mean, I didn't run away, but I refused to hear anything about Wally. She said that was too bad, and left the next day to spend the weekend with Wally. At that point, I was fed up with it. And on Saturday, I made an appointment with a divorce attorney, who was a friend of a friend. However, this only confirmed that in our no-divorce state, I would be poor sexless and funding Janice's sex life. Monday night after Janice got home, I listened to all the details. She was doing things with Wally that she hadn't done with me in years. Or had never done. I'll admit after so long without sex. Having her talk enthusiastically about her lewd adventures made it hard for me, I'm ashamed of it. But I did. I asked if we could sleep together. Honey, you know what Wally said? because you sulked and refused to listen. You'll have to wait 2 weeks. Before we can even ask permission to sleep together. Ask permission. What the hell? But I'll tell you what. I'll let you tonight however you like it. I walked back to the bar, sobbing into my whiskey. That's what it would be like. Whiskey, it must be said. Finally, at 2 a.m, the bartender took my keys from me and called a cab. When I got home, Janice was gone. 3 weeks of agony. As I wondered where Janice was and if she would ever come back. Most of her clothes were still here, but many things were gone. I realized I knew nothing about Wally, except his name and an embarrassing amount of details about his sexual prowess. Janice's phone immediately went straight to voicemail, and she didn't respond to any of the messages I'd left, or any of the texts or emails I'd sent. I thought about reporting her missing to the police, but it was obvious that they would realize she left voluntarily, and I didn't think I could handle the awkwardness of explaining the situation to them. I called her friends, pretending I was just looking for her that evening, that she wasn't home when I arrived, and I thought maybe she was at a friend's house. I'm not sure anyone believed me, but eventually her friend Sally said, "Joe, you know she's with Wally. There's nothing wrong with her. Don't worry about her." Sally refused to say anything more, or give me any more information about Wally. I became angry and aggressive, threatening her and yelling over the phone. "I'm going to tell Janice and Wally about what you said. I'm sure you'll regret threatening me. Every cloud has a silver lining." The next evening, Janice went home, but the cloud was big, black, and hard as a rock. Wally was 6'2", 200 pounds without an ounce of fat. And so black, almost purple. The cliches just kept coming off. He walked in, put my back against the wall, towering over my 5 feet 8 inches, and put his face right in front of mine. "You didn't respect me, you didn't respect Janice and Sally." He put his finger on my breastbone and pressed me into the wall. I didn't realize one finger could hurt so much. He kept pressing until I shuddered and whimpered. Later, I thought about what a wuss I was. But at that moment, all I felt was pain. Wally smirked and pushed me over to the couch, making me sit down. "Janice," he ordered, "go make us a nice dinner while Joe and I discuss." Janice hummed and hurried into the kitchen, sitting down at the table. Wally said, "Joe, until you accept the situation, there will be no sex, and I'm moving in here with Janice for a while, so you won't annoy her or me anymore. Besides, you're going to apologize to Sally." "Fuck you." I started to yell when out of nowhere a fist slammed into my gut. All the air went out and I gasped like a fish. "Joe, I told you not to be rude to me or Janice. Every action has consequences." "Janice," he called out. When she went out, he told her to fetch the box he had given her. When she returned, she said with a sad look, "Joe, you don't want to make Wally angry," and handed him the box. "This is a cage for your dignity, and you will wear it until you learn manners, befitting a cuckold like you." I started to object when Wally slapped me across the face, harder than I thought anyone could be hit. Janice exclaimed, "Joe, behave yourself, please. Don't make him hurt you." Wally grabbed my shirt and ripped most of it off. "Take your clothes off now. Don't make me hit you, boy." Boy? This boy was probably about 15 years younger than me. But the slap brought tears to my eyes, and the humiliation made me sob. I felt weak and could hardly stand on my feet. Wally raised his fist threateningly, and I stripped off my clothes, unable to think of anything to say in response. When I was left naked, Wally told Janice to put the cage on me. "You should know how to put it on him. I think he'll have to wear it many times at first until he calms down. Now Wally continued. Should I get Sally to apologize, or do we need more discipline? Sally and Janice had a good laugh about me. Sally told me to stop whimpering and undressed herself. When it was finally over, Janice made dinner, and we all sat down to eat. Sally and I were naked. I could hardly eat. But Wally insisted that I clear my plate. Not thinking I needed any more consequences, I choked on my dinner and got up to leave. Wally stopped me. I'll leave it as it is this time. He said, but in the future, you'll ask permission to leave the table, either from me or from Janice when I'm gone. And Janice was kind enough to make us dinner. So from now on, one of your duties is to do the dishes. Get to it. I washed the dishes, dreaming of running a kitchen knife at Wally. Janice and Sally. But I was sure the knife would end up in me if I tried to do that. I thought about buying a gun or poisoning them. Or burning the house down with them upstairs. For crying out loud. Yes, Janice. Sally and Wally were upstairs, entertaining loudly and energetically in my marital bed. I won't describe the details. I'll just say that Wally stayed in Janice's bedroom. For the next 3 weeks a week less than. I wore a cage. Sally visited him regularly. And Janice and Sally slept with Wally several times a day a week. After one of these sessions, Wally sent Janice to my room. Johnny's demanded, Wally said for you to wash me. She started to climb onto my bed where I was sleeping. No, I recalled. Janice shrugged and said, Joe, until you do the program, we can't have sex. I thought you loved me. Wally was going to give me the key to your cage. But now you're going to have to stay in it longer. Longer is another 3 weeks. After a week's absence, Wally came back and sent Janice back after their first night bonding. To my shame, I washed her off and she went back to Wally. After only a couple minutes, she returned smiling and removed the cage. She patted the freed animal and said, just keep going and everything will be fine. Then she bestowed a sensual kiss on me and went back to Wally's bed. You wonder how I put up with it. Why I didn't walk away or attack them, or do something to show I wasn't a wuss. Well, I guess I was, or I'm a wuss. I loved Janice, and even in the cot cage, I needed her. I never realized how much until I was about to lose her. Would you give your life for the one you loved? I think I would. Janice spent a couple nights with Wally, and when she got home, she told me everything in detail. The first night, she and Sally frolicked with Wally. And the second night, Wally came home with a friend. Janice was shocked. She told Wally that she couldn't. That she would feel like a slut. Wally shook his head. Janice, you slept with me and Joe, albeit at different times. You sleep with Sally and me. No problem, now I want to share you with Jimbo. And you think that's promiscuous? Why don't you like Jimbo? Janice admitted that Jimbo was a nice guy and very sexy. But she had never been with 2 guys. You've never been with another woman either. Have you? You like that? Didn't you? Why not see what it's like to be with 2 guys? Reasoned Wally. Jimbo brought us drinks while Wally was talking to me. I found out later that he put some ecstasy in my drink, which probably helped convince me because it was incredible. I had never felt so alive. Wally says I'm made for multiple lovers. He says we should try a gangbang soon. Oh, and he says, if you behave, we can make love next Tuesday. We'll be gone Wednesday and Thursday, so I'll be clean for him by Friday. I'm not sure I can call it making love anymore. I just wanted sex and I'm looking forward to Tuesday. But it was a disappointing adventure. I came home from work eager to do it, but Janice insisted on having dinner first. Then, of course, The dishes had to be done. And on Tuesday, I cleaned the bathroom. My list of chores had grown to include almost every household task, except cooking and laundry, which Janice didn't trust me with. After several disasters, I did my own laundry. Of course, as well as linens and towels. Actually, Janice only did her own and Wally's laundry. When I finished scrubbing the toilets, Janice was watching a movie on TV. She let me touch her, but nothing more than that. After the movie, honey. It was past 10 when we finally went upstairs. Janice finally got into it enough to let me climb aboard. After months without sex, I didn't seem to last a minute. Humiliated, I squirmed as a frustrated Janice told me how much better Wally was, and what a pathetic, disappointing lover I was. Janice then sent me back to my room. As I lay in bed, I pondered how I had gotten to this point and why I put up with it. I went over all the reasons, and still came down to the fact that I love the woman I was now starting to think of as a bitch. But I told myself again I love her. Any crumbs I can get are better than none. Wednesday morning, Janice came into my room and apologized for her derogatory words the night before. I was just upset, honey. I love you so much and was looking forward to your lovemaking. It just ended so quickly that I was disappointed. However, when I asked if we could try again, she shook her head and replied, "Oh no, honey. Wally only gave permission for last night." I came home from work on Friday and found Wally sitting in the living room with 2 other black men, drinking my beer and watching the game on cable. I stood in the doorway somewhat surprised. "Boy, take their clothes off," Wally shouted. I was stunned, and just stood there until Wally raised his fist threateningly. I reluctantly stripped off my clothes, much to the amusement of Wally and his crew. "Sit down, Jimbo's upstairs with Janice right now. And you're on duty between the cars of the train she's pulling." Jimbo came down the stairs yelling that it was Marcus's turn, but stopped when he saw me. "Oh no, Marcus. The janitor is already here, so you'll have to wait." When I got upstairs, I saw Janice prostrate on the bed. "How could you do this to me?" I asked. "Oh, shut up, you know you like it. Now hurry up before Wally decides to punish us both." The train started running frequently on weekends, and the gangbangs began, though thankfully not at my house. Janice was sent to different hotels and then told me about it. When I asked if Marcus was pandering, she said no. He just liked sharing her and knew she liked it. It was a warm summer evening when I came home to find the house empty, and a note for me on the kitchen table. "Joe Wally has decided that my breasts need to be bigger and is going to have surgery in Atlanta, where he knows a good clinic. He says there are a few more improvements I like, and I'm sure you will too. You've always liked big breasts, haven't you? Anyway, I'll be gone until it's all healed and you can see the final result. Wally says it will take a few months, so don't worry if I get a chance. I'll give you a call. Remember, I love you, Janice." I sat and reread the note over and over, until it was too dark to see it. By then I knew it word for word and sat in the dark repeating it. Before her return, I had only heard from her once in September. She called. At first I thought it was someone imitating Elmer Fudd. When I finally realized it was her, I told her I couldn't understand her. "Oh, it's tongue piercing." What, I asked? At the tongue piercing, my tongue piercing. I finally understood. "What else did you do?" I asked in a panic. "I can't tell you, it's Sir Piercing," she carefully reprimanded. Then she said she had to go and hung up. I got the feeling that the call was an unauthorized Wally. It wasn't until after Valentine's Day that Janice finally came home. I think her trunk went into the house a few minutes before she did. "I've seen smaller basketballs," She ran into the house with unsteady steps and hugged me. "I missed you so much," she purred, her diction now only slightly garbled by her pierced tongue. "I love you, sweetie." I awkwardly hugged her back, straddling the watermelons on her chest. "Marcus said I should show you my new body." Janice told me Marcus. "You mean Wally?" She made a sad face and replied no. "Wally sold me to Marcus, now I'm his bitch." I could only stare at her. "But look," she exclaimed excitedly and began to shed her clothes. I could only stare, her breasts were huge and sagging. And I noticed her Nicki Minaj ass. Seriously, you could serve breakfast off of her. She was sticking out. I don't know how she could sit. No wonder she had to walk in tiny steps. Then there was too much to see all at once. I was overwhelmed with terror. I stopped looking at and cataloging her enhancements. When I realized she was a few months pregnant, I just stared at her. "Oh yeah, you're going to be a daddy in about 4 months. Janice grinned happily. "Hell no," I thought to myself. Then I noticed her smile. "What happened to your teeth?" "They look like plastic." Her face creased. "Yeah," she whimpered. I looked at her in horror. "You didn't remove it?" I gasped. She smiled pitifully. "Yes." Then she pulled the top plate out and opened her mouth to show me the empty gums. "This is what Marcus wanted," she shouted as I rushed into the bathroom to throw up. When I stopped spitting up, I screamed, "You're crazy, you Wally Marcus. You're all fucking crazy." I realized there was nothing left of the woman I loved. There wasn't a crumb left for me to even try to enjoy her. I couldn't remember when I was happy anymore. Janice had gone from being my loving wife to being a bitch. To being a whore. I didn't see her coming back. I hoped that eventually she would remember about our children and come to her senses. But she was gone. I walked out into the living room and looked at the grotesque creature. "You're gone," I said. "There's nothing left of you, and it's not worth staying here anymore. Nor should you have. I should have left the first time you left me. I don't care how much the divorce costs. It will be worth it." I headed upstairs to pack my things. "But you can't leave, I just got home." "I love you, I missed you so much." Apparently, she was having trouble navigating the stairs with her amplification, which gave me time to pack enough. When she finally made it to her room, I was already walking down the stairs past her. She wasn't going down any faster than she was going up. I walked out the door and disappeared. Let the kids know what horrors were going on, and that I would contact them in a few months, when I was far enough away from the thing in my house. Epilogue later. My kids told me that their mom was now in a stable run by Marcus, had been arrested several times for prostitution and had a severe cocaine addiction. At first, they begged me to come back and help rescue their mother, but eventually agreed with me that this was a lost cause, doomed to drag us all down. I didn't tell them about all the humiliation I had allowed before I came to my senses, but I told them enough for them to realize that I had already done everything I could to stay with their mother. I'd like to say I found love and a wonderful life, but I lived trapped in the memories of the disgusting, depraved acts and humiliations I allowed for the sake of love. I'm an old, fat, balding man who became impotent through the power of love. You can keep it